I think the greatest way to give of yourself and what you have to offer is by teaching. We're trying to explain that the worst thing that can happen to a human being is to have to take the life of another human being. You will never, ever forget it.
How do you teach character? What's the best way to teach character education to young people today? Quite frankly, you can put up a lesson plan and write anything out. That doesn't mean it's going to connect to kids.
He had to fight his way. I mean, he fights for all of us to have the freedom. So freedom as a special taste meant a lot to me when I read that.
Had you ever thought about that before?
No, not at all.
I think the whole idea of the Medal of Honor is for the purpose of teaching everybody that he's got a role to play in his community. So it's important to know the lengths to which some people are willing to go because they feel so strongly about their fellow man.
I did not know a lot about the Medal of Honor. I went to a dinner at the Ambassador Hotel and Jack Jacobs was the speaker. And he introduced us to the concept of Medal of Honor, and I thought the potential for the kids to see these people as heroes was, truly something that we could implement in the schools in a positive way.
We were asked as a team of educators to write lessons based on video interviews with living recipients of the Medal of Honor. So we were looking at courage and commitment, sacrifice, integrity, citizenship, and patriotism, and those are fundamental values for I think everyone in our nation.
We worked hard at doing what we do as teachers, and that's write lessons, and we worked hard at finding ways to take recipient stories and turn them into classroom materials, some ways that teachers could use them to impact their students.
This was something you never forget. I have a debt to pay, so I made a promise. If I ever go to America, I'm gonna become a G.I. Joe.
I wish these were the stars of baseball cards in this country. I wish kids grew up knowing these recipients' stats. I wish they knew where they were all born and what wars they fought in and what they're known for, as they do athletes and rock stars. We're trying to spread the word about what kinds of citizens these are. We're trying to spread the word that these qualities will help you in many ways. So we have this curriculum. We had a theory that you could teach these values. You could use these recipients as a teaching tool. And before long, they'd also end up studying war. They'd study world history and the clash of great powers. What a concept.
The vignettes connect specifically with the students. The way that the vignettes are done, they can see soldiers or Marines or airmen who are their age, and the values that the recipients talk about resonate with kids.
Each Medal of Honor recipient is just like a regular person. You take away things that they've been through and their personal experiences, and you apply them to your own life. And it's like, once you can do that, it's just, you and that person make a connection.
When you take a look at what the Medal of Honor recipients have done, they've dug deep down into themselves at a certain moment in time and done something very courageous and very selfless to protect their comrades. The deeds that they performed translate into the ability of the ordinary person to believe in him or herself.
What did he do that was really extraordinary to y'all? Brandon?
He ran through a severe firing to help the wounded. Also, even though he was hurt, he kept moving to help people.
All right.
Their stories are very surprising that someone could go to that deep of a level and, risking their own lives for someone else.
These guys really embody a lot of characteristics that we want to pass on to our students. I've dealt with students who have personal struggles that I could barely comprehend and barely get my head wrapped around what they have to deal with. But then you show one of these videos and, plug this into a class, it's phenomenal.
It's about defining your heroes. It's about character. I mean, you just look at the reaction in the classroom from these young people or what they say to you and you realize it's profound. I mean, it's absolutely changing young people's lives.
Can you share a little bit about what you think middle school kids would get from this video?
That's what we started out with, that quote, you never learn to serve until you realize there's something more important than yourself.
To be honest, I came here today not really knowing what to expect. I didn't have any expectations that it was something that I necessarily would be able to bring back into my classroom. But I watched those videos today, and I was moved and touched by it, and I thought, my students will be as well.
I remember seeing on one of the tapes, after they taught this curriculum to a selected group of kids in Erie, really cynical high school kids, saying to the camera, I didn't know this. Why didn't I know this? I get teary-eyed about it, but if you can get that notion to that kid, you can really make a difference. We won't be able to tell what the full positive effect will be until the generation who receives the education will have matured. But instinct tells me, my intuition says, that if you have two choices, education or no education, you're going to be a lot better with education.
And I'm the director of the Walter and Lenore Annenberg Presidential Learning Center here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation. The video you've just seen is an introduction to the amazing work being done by our partners at the Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation. And today you're going to have an opportunity to witness firsthand the power of this educational program. But before we start our discussion today, it's a tradition here at the Foundation to honor our men and women in uniform by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And the young men of Boy Scout Troop 54 are going to lead us in that, so please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and please be seated. So before I invite our special guest to the stage, I'd like to point out just a few of the people we have in the audience who are here to suggest that learning doesn't necessarily stop when the bell rings or when your diploma is confirmed. We have in the audience today Roy Rocco and his wife, Christina. Roy is the son of Medal of Honor recipient Louis Richard Rocco. We have in the audience today Corporal Benjamin Robert Smith and his wife, Emma. Corporal Robert Smith is a recipient of the Victoria Cross, which is the eminent award for acts of bravery in wartime and Australia's highest military honor. So thank you for joining us all the way from Australia. From our partners at the Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation, we have a number of members of their board, as well as family members. I just want to recognize a few of them. Bruce Brereton, John Glotzbach, Robert Jerome, Donald Schwartz, Cy Johnson, Nick Kehoe, Jennifer Lennon, and then all the family members of our panelists who are also here today. Thank you for coming today. From the office of California State Senator Sharon Runner, we have Miss Linda Johnson. Thank you. And I'd also like to take a moment to recognize all of the veterans and active duty military who have joined us today. Please stand and be recognized, and thank you so much for your service to our country. In remarks to the Congressional Medal of Honor Society in 1983, President Ronald Reagan said, "Freedom, we must always remember, is never more than one generation away from extinction. Each generation must do whatever is necessary to preserve it and to pass it on to the next, or it will be lost forever." I speak to our audience of students when I say, I hope you'll notice both parts of what President Reagan says about ensuring freedom. Each generation must do their part first to preserve freedom, and our speakers today represent some of America's best efforts to preserve freedom over the generations. But to preserve freedom is not enough. President Reagan also points out the necessity of passing it on from one generation to the next. And the team at the Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation has put together a remarkable curriculum which invites students to delve into the stories of Medal of Honor recipients and explore important concepts such as courage, commitment, sacrifice, patriotism, integrity, and citizenship. And it's one of the finest examples I've seen of how we can best pass on these values of freedom from one generation to the next. When we talk about education today, a lot of the discussion of education that happens in the media, in politics, in general, revolves around tests. And the students in the audience know what I'm talking about. From kindergarten onward, you have been tested continuously. Some might even say relentlessly. So much so that the word test itself, for some of you, probably causes some kind of physical reaction that's not a positive one. Your scores in literacy and math are used to evaluate what you've learned and how well your schools and your teachers have done at teaching it to you. You have spelling tests, vocabulary tests, math tests, science tests, physical education tests, and just when you think you've been tested enough, you spend a week or two filling in the bubbles on the state test exam. And I was in the classroom for 10 years, and we called these types of tests high-stakes tests. But I want to let all of you in on a little secret. The tests that you take in a classroom are not the real high-stakes tests. The tests that you take outside of the classroom, the tests that you can't really prepare for, those are the real tests. A real test is standing up to one of your best friends if you think that they're being a bully. A real test is being honest even when it would be easier and more convenient to lie. A real test is when you're on patrol in the French countryside and your platoon comes under heavy fire from German machine guns and mortar. Staff Sergeant Walter Ehlers was in precisely this scenario when he scrambled to the top of a mound of earth specifically to draw the attention of the machine guns and the mortar so that the other members of his platoon could flee to safety. A real test is when you're flying a medevac helicopter in thick jungle fog and close-range enemy fire, trying to rescue fellow soldiers. In January of 1968, Major General Patrick Brady flew in precisely these conditions, and despite the 400 bullet holes that were found in the helicopters he flew that day, he was able to rescue more than 50 men. A real test is when an infantry commander closes a landing zone to any further helicopter operations because of the intensity of enemy fire, but you know that American forces are in desperate need of ammunition and aid. Under these circumstances, Colonel Bruce Crandall made 22 flights in an unarmed helicopter, delivering ammunition and evacuating more than 70 wounded men. A real test is when, despite not having slept for 36 hours, you and your men are loaded into a landing craft, sent down a river to join an intense battle with the NVA. Colonel J. Vargas, in just this situation, managed to carry fellow Marines through more than hundreds of yards of intense enemy fire to get them to a safe evacuation point. And only after 3 days of battle did he allow himself to be treated for bullet and shrapnel wounds he had suffered. These are the tests that no amount of cramming can ever fully prepare you for. But lucky for us, we have role models like our panelists today who are willing to pass their lessons of personal bravery and self-sacrifice on to the next generation. And I invite you to please join me in welcoming Staff Sergeant Walter Ehlers, Major General Patrick Brady, Colonel Bruce Crandall, and Colonel J. Vargas to the stage. Thank you. And then your seat's the first one here? You're in this first seat here, sir? Yeah.
Sit down?
Yeah. So I'd like to start off our panel today by asking you to reflect a little bit. The name of the curriculum that the Medal of Honor Foundation has developed is called Lessons of Personal Bravery and Self-Sacrifice. And I'd like to start off by asking you to reflect on what that means given your experience. And then after that, we're gonna turn to our student audience for questions. But if I could start, we'll just start here and then we'll head to the left. So Staff Sergeant Ehlers.
Sure. I'm Walter Ehlers, and I was born and raised in the state of Kansas. And when World War II broke out in Europe and so forth, I was going to high school, and my grandfather Ehlers, who was actually a German born here in the United States and so forth, he told us we're going to have a war with Germany or something like this. So 1940, when I graduated from high school, my brother and I decided we wanted to join the Army, and he was 4 years older than I, and so we went down to Fort Riley, Kansas, and I have to tell you that my life changed from the time that I had to go home and get my mother's signature. She looked me in the eye, and she said, my dad said he would sign, but she looked me in the eye, and she said, with tears in her eyes, "Son, I will only sign if you promise to be a Christian soldier." I was shocked, but I promised her that I would do my very best. And I remembered that from that time on, she made the impression on me that if I wasn't going to be a Christian soldier, I would dishonor her. And so I actually took that with me all the way through my military career. I didn't do anything unusual, and I didn't do anything that would dishonor her. And above all, I didn't want to dishonor God. And so that's the way I lived my life. And I had a terrific military career. I had 5 years in the military service, and I had 3 landings and 8 campaigns. And I went all the way from Casablanca area in French Morocco. We landed at Fidela, at Gala in Sicily, and at Omaha Beach in Normandy. And that's how I got started, and my life has been changed ever since. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me when she told me that, because I can still remember as clear as today that those tears in her eyes were coming straight from the heart. And so I lived my life, and the baddest thing that happened to me in the military service is when my brother got killed on D-Day, Roland Ehlers. And I remember these soldiers all these years, and I've been back several times, and it's an honor to go back and to respect the lives of these people who gave so much in their lives. I saw so many people killed on D-Day, and you know, I talk to schools all the time. I got to tell you one little thing. One little girl one time asked me, "How many people did I kill?" I said, "Honey, I didn't kill any people." She looked at me like there was something wrong with me. I said, "I wasn't trained to kill people. I was trained to kill the enemy. And they were trained to kill me. And so I'm probably here today because I did what I had to do, and I didn't go making any special efforts. But I did learn a lot from my mother, and that's what kept me straight and honest throughout military service."
It's my turn. Walt's got me all choked up here. So my name is Pat Brady. I'm universally known as the greatest helicopter pilot that ever lived. And you're privileged today to meet the greatest helicopter and the second greatest, although that's questionable. I've been a member of the Medal of Honor Society for many years. I know I don't look that old, but the greatest thing that we've ever done in our society, and we've done a lot of things with young people, with veterans, with every cause that we thought was right and just, but the greatest thing we've ever done is this educational program that you're here to learn about. They say that, they ask a guy, if you had it to do over again, would you do it differently? Well, of course, we can't. We've been in the arena. We've had our time. We're out of the arena. We can't live our lives over again ourselves, but we can live our lives over again through young people. And we've been there where you've been. You've never been where we've been. I had a boss of mine one time look at me. I really screwed something up bad. And he says, Pat, don't feel bad. No one is a total loss. They can always serve as a bad example. So we are here as kind of a bad example. We want to steer the young people around the obstacles that we faced. And you've all heard of the First Tee program, where golfers go out and teach things like honesty, integrity, essential elements of the golf to young people through golf, professional golf. Our program goes out to teach patriotism, courage, sacrifice, what a true hero is, how to define a hero, through the experiences and vignettes of those of us who wear the medal. That's what we're useful for, and that's what we are all dedicated to for what part of life that's left for us. So this is a great thing that we do. We're happy to do it, and looking forward to your questions.
My name is Bruce Crandall, and it's always nice to get the mic after Pat. You might think that half of the people that got the Medal of Honor were helicopter pilots. That's not so. We had 6 total, I think, during the war, although we had some of the heaviest losses in combat. One of the privileges I had was commanding U.S. troops in combat, and one of the greatest responsibilities I ever had was commanding troops in combat. Last week I spent 5 days at Fort Jackson going through some of the training that our troops do in basic training, and I can hardly walk now. I'm not fit for basic training anymore. 61 years ago I graduated from high school, and I was in the same situation as many of you. I was 5'6", weighed 143 pounds, and I didn't know what I was going to do, except that I was going to play baseball. And instead I got drafted by the Army instead of the Yankees or the Orioles or the Cubs. And my batting average is 3 times my grade point. Not too bad if you're graduating still. But I ended up making a career out of the Army. And part of it was because I had been raised in a home that service was one of the requirements. My father had served in the Navy. All of my uncles had served in the Navy. And my mother went to work in a shipyard as a welder. And we had a great uncle came to live with us so that he could help take care of us. My grandmother lived with us. But that was the way it was. So we learned by example during the war what we owed to our country and how lucky we were to be in our country. The young people of today are probably the best generation we'll ever have. We thought ours was, and some guy wrote an article about the Second World War, said they were the greatest generation. So we'll always have the greatest generation. We are trying to pass on a legacy to you young folks so that you understand that courage is not a battlefield example. You all will have situations where you'll be required to have courage, to say no when it's a proper answer, when others are saying yes. To stand up for what's right for your friends. You'll learn teamwork, and in relationships in your school life and in your real life. But you won't hopefully ever have to serve on a battlefield. No one hates war more than the warrior. We, as a group, feel that way. The average age of this group is my age, and I don't want to talk about that.
29?
We got 3 young guys that came on, and they dropped our average age by a year. That didn't make me feel any younger. I am a real supporter of the program, and I'm willing to help in any way I can to see that it gets to our young people. And even in Australia, sir, if you'll have me and invite me over, I'd be glad to. And I'd like to know the tea times ahead of time. Thank you very much for having me here, and it's a pleasure to be in the Reagan Library again.
Good job.
Well, good morning. First thing I want to say is to the teachers and all the administrators and even all the employees that work in the schools around our nation, and especially the state of California. Thank you for everything you're doing with our young generation. I've been in your shoes. I love to teach, still do. And I know the hardships that you're going through and making great citizens out of these people that are here today and throughout the state of California. To Ben and Emma, thank you very much for being with us from Australia and the rest of the Australian team. It's always an honor to meet another warrior that's been highly decorated, and we're very proud of you, and we're honored to be in your company, Ben. Thank you for being with us. I guess I'm a little different than some of the, I'm not a helicopter pilot. I was a grunt in the Marine Corps. And a company commander, and you heard, yes, I did save about 7 of my Marines by going back into the battle zone and going forward, that those that were knocked down and brought them out, including my battalion commander. But there was more to that story that kind of tied in with some golden keys that my brothers gave to me on the eve that I was about to go into the Corps. And a lot of what transpired in my particular situation was based on those keys, and I'm going to share them with you. And hopefully some of you can put them in your pocket and maybe use a couple of them. But my parents were immigrants. Mother's from Italy, my dad from Spain. Her sons, 2 of them were in World War II. One fought on Iwo Jima, one fought in Okinawa, and Joseph fought in Korea, and I did Vietnam. But the keys that they gave me as I was departing one evening from a small town in northern Arizona was very useful, and all came true. My mother, for an example, she already had 3 Marines during 2 in World War II and 1 in Korea. And when she learned, after Bruce and I, we played college ball, and we both went I went to the Dodgers, he went to the Orioles, but the Army got hold of him, but I got to go up for a while. But when I came home, I was devastated having not been able to climb that ladder all the way up. But I had a wonderful father who taught me that, just look how far you went up the ladder. And it was an honor to. And then I decided I wanted to go into the officers' corps in the Marine Corps. Well, my mother had convinced my 3 brothers that you get in there and you sit down with him and you tell him he's going to the Navy. He is not going to be a Marine.
Smart mother.
Well, she was. Well, that evening, she took my brother, my dad, and told him to go start the car. We're going for a ride by your brothers. My sons talked to JR. And this conversation didn't last very long. My brother says, we've been told by Mom to convince you not to go in the Marine Corps, like we did. And my oldest brother, Angelo, said, if you don't go into the Corps, we're going to break your legs. So they all were highly decorated, World War II in Korea. They didn't receive the highest awards, but they received quite a bit. But the golden keys that they sat that evening with me, and I want to pass them on to the young people, is that always set a good example. Set your standards high. Always take care of your fellow men, number 2. And the third one was kind of tough, is that whatever you do, don't ever ask a Marine or anyone that you're leading to do anything in peacetime or in combat that you wouldn't do. Now, how does that relate to you? Well, if you go back to the first one and setting your standards and examples high, at this stage of life, you should be establishing yourselves and writing down some objectives, but make them reachable objectives. Be yourself, believe in yourself, believe in your God, or whatever supreme being you believe in. Always, always take care of each other. Truly take care of each other. And learn to do it now. And make your friendships today, because friendships at your level right now will always be forever. I'm still, like the rest of us, very close to my high school and peers that I had when I was growing up. We still communicate. Take care of each other. In my time and in theirs, we didn't have drugs. I didn't even know what the heck some of the drugs were. And the main thing was, so we didn't talk about it, but the main thing is you don't need it. The energy that you can create within your little hearts and your bodies and your minds is within you right now. It's a God-given gift that He's given you. So I'm going to conclude by simply saying that enjoy life. It is truly a one-time around. And right now is when you want to establish yourselves as to what you want to be in the future. A great citizen, a great leader, a great future teacher, an educator, and whatever dimension you want to get into. But promise me that you'll take some of these little golden keys and use them. I transfer them from the core to my everyday life. And they work. They're very simple. Set the example. Set your standards high. Take care of yourself. And never ask anybody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. Thank you.
Sorry about the comment.
Okay, so now we're gonna get some questions from students. Now I know the students in the audience, many of them have been studying your stories and going through some of this curriculum and learning quite a bit about the Medal of Honor and what it means and some of the traits that are described in the curriculum. And so we're gonna head. Just a side note, in the audience we have Bill Kuhar and Heather Kensel, who are both work with the Medal of Honor Foundation and have done the curriculum, and they're going to be running around getting students to ask questions. So we're going to start over here. Go ahead.
Firstly, I wanted to thank the panel as well as the collective Medal of Honor recipients across the country for your undying service to our country. I'm Henry Zhang from Arcadia High School, here under the direction of Mr. Christopher Moshton from United States History class. My question was, following your respective experiences in the field, how was your reintegration back into society like?
Following your military experiences.
So yeah, just so to repeat, so the question was, you know, after your experiences in battle, what was it like to come back into society?
I'd like to answer that one because I came back to California and I became a city manager in Northern California, and I like combat better. Now I actually, I spent 3 years during Prop 13, so those of you that were alive and understand the problem. Leadership in the military or outside is the same. You and Jay covered it. Never lead from the back. Yeah, you don't ever do things that you don't know are the right thing to do. And that goes in your in civilian life or outside.
Mine was pretty easy. Like Pat, I stayed in the Corps for 30 years and continued on with leadership, taking care of the Marines, et cetera, and commanding more different commands. Went from a company up to an infantry regiment of 5,000 Marines. But nothing changed in as far as my views towards society. I was very proud of what the Marines did, and as well as all of us that fought in Vietnam. Some people cry that we lost the war. I never lost a battle. I shouldn't say we never lost a battle. And the war was in our hands to win, but things happened that we decided society put so much pressure on the campaign. But it didn't change my views as to life and love of my country, and to continue on and lead and to teach the youth. I enjoyed that.
Walt.
What?
I stayed in the military after I came back, and I don't regret my getting into them. And there may be a lesson in this, I don't know, but I didn't want to go in the military. When I came out of high school, I had an opportunity to play football at several universities, but there was this foxy young chick, and she was going to a university that didn't have a football team, but they did have ROTC, and it was mandatory. Hated it, every bit of it. So I kind of put up with the military, and then one thing led to another. I ended up in Vietnam for a couple of years, and my thing was, when I was in Berlin when they built the wall, and I looked around me at the leadership and the people that I saw who were serving their country in uniform, something I didn't want to do. And I thought, my God. I was there with Norman Schwarzkopf, Fred Wyan, who later became Chief of Staff of the Army, and I looked at these guys. We get off a train in Berlin, Germany, and here's somebody there to meet us. I'm a crummy second lieutenant, already got 2 kids. The guy meets me, takes me to an apartment. He got food in the refrigerator, furnished and everything, and the commander's wife the next day comes to see my wife, who was pregnant with our 3rd child. Wow, these people are something else. And then they built the wall. We went through that kind of stress. They're shooting their own people off the wall. My medics are picking them up. I just looked at the people around me in uniform, and I said, there are some really wonderful leaders here. I would like to grow up and be like them. So I stayed after the time in the military and learned a great many lessons as far as courage, sacrifice, what a real hero is, and those things hopefully we'll talk about later on. So I didn't come back into society after the military. I stayed in and got to serve with some of the greatest people that I've ever been around anywhere. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have left home when I found out my parents were civilians. But I love to be around military people. All you young people ought to take a good hard look at it. It'll change your life. You'll see leadership like you've never seen anywhere else. Walt's part of the greatest generation. The young people today, I think, are part of the 2nd greatest generation. And so just take a look at it. I think that it's a wonderful way to spend your life, even if you're only in for a couple of years. What the heck? You're still serving your country, and you'll come out with great skills in terms of leadership, interpersonal relations, discipline, and stuff like that. So I didn't have a problem coming back into society after combat, not one bit. Walter?
Yeah, I got something to say. I am the lowest rank up here, but I'm not a staff sergeant. I was a 2nd lieutenant when I got my Medal of Honor. And there was a battle. It was a battlefield commission. And on behalf of all the battlefield commission officers, I'd like to apologize because I wasn't insisting on being called a second lieutenant. But I am a second lieutenant and the lowest ranking officer up here. But otherwise, that was for leadership. And I've stayed ahead of the thing. I love this staff sergeant rate, you know, because it was better than the second lieutenant. When I was that, I didn't have to salute any of the rest of the enlisted men in the military service, but I had to salute all of them, and then I had to salute all the officers above me. So that really is a higher rank than what I really am, but so it's a pretty good thing to be a staff sergeant. So I'm kind of happy about that. But I want you to know these battlefield commissions didn't come easy. You had to be a terrific leader in the battlefield to get a commission in the 1st Infantry Division. I found that out for sure. And on December the 9th, I was commissioned an officer. On December the 16th, on the day of the Battle of the Bulge started, I became a second lieutenant in Paris, France. And so now, you see, I did have some leadership training.
Well, we're honored to be with you, Walt.
Yeah.
But now that you promoted yourself, you know, you have to buy the first round of drinks tonight.
Yeah. On a second lieutenant's pay, that's going to be tough.
Do we have our next question over here?
Okay. General Brady, my question for you is, were you traumatized by all the wounded soldiers you rescued?
Was I traumatized by all the wounded soldiers I rescued? You know, I had a real problem with blood and needles, especially the damn needles. And when they were vaccinating me, and I just hated that. And in fact, the first time they took blood, I fainted. So I was very apprehensive about going into a combat situation where people were, in the course of a day, in 2 tours in Vietnam, I picked up about something over 5,000 people. And we saw the human body in every possible horrible configuration that it could be in. And I was really worried about how I physically react to that. Even today, if there's something on television about an operation or a needle or something like that, I turn the damn thing off. But in combat, in the environment, it didn't bother me. It bothered me that people were hurt. That bothered me very much. But it didn't physically bother me because I was so busy with what I was trying to do. And there's nothing in the world greater than to save a human life. I can't think, you know, the physicians, and by the way, the teachers and the coaches do this also. They save young lives. But to find your way through a bunch of obstacles, of course, with me being the greatest helicopter pilot that ever lived, I could find a way in there that nobody else could find. But to work your way through the obstacles, to get your hands on the person who was really seriously hurt, and to put him in the hands of a physician who really saved their lives. We didn't. But the physicians and the nurses in the hospitals who really saved their lives was a thrill beyond anything in life that I can think of. You know, steak, lobster, sex, can I say that? I don't care what it is in life, there's nothing to match the thrill of saving a human life. So that thrill, I guess, maybe helped me overcome my incredible physical aversion to needles and blood. So I got through it just fine.
The kids are lined up.
Colonel Crandall, who or what inspired you to join the war knowing that you may or may not come back?
I'm sorry, say that.
Who or what inspired you to join, knowing you may not come back, join in the war?
Do it again, I didn't get you.
Who or what inspired you to join the military? He's an old guy. I'm helping him out.
The draft board.
Inspired you to join, knowing you might not come back from Vietnam?
It inspired me to
go in the military.
See, I got inspired by a letter that says, "Greetings, you've been selected by..." by your friends and neighbors. I didn't have that many friends. I've suggested if they ever start the draft again that they start the letter with, "Greetings, you've just been shafted by Uncle Sam." I wanted to serve, and the draft was on, and I had a choice. I could have got out of going because I was in the National Guard, and all I had to do was tell the draft board that. But I knew I had to serve at some time, and I was 5'6" and weighed 143 pounds out of high school, and I hadn't grown, and I felt like a couple years in the Army playing ball would be good for me, and so I went in the Army and accepted it. The draft is the worst thing that ever happened to the military, in my judgment. It should never happen again. When the draft didn't give us bad people, it gave us some great people. A lot of them had college educations or partial educations. But what it did, it gave the local judge and the sheriff the opportunity to tell our young hoods that they either go in the Army or go to jail. And all we did was change where they went to jail. We had the largest stockades we've ever had. Today, they're all volunteers, and they're doing a wonderful job. And we ought to keep the military strong enough to encourage the people to stay in, that join, and to make the family's life good enough so that they will. But if I had to do all over again, I would have done the same thing because I found a career in the military very satisfying. I also found a career after I got out pretty satisfying, stealing businesses out of California to come to Arizona. Thank you.
I was wondering what was going through your mind when you committed your acts of bravery?
Talking to Jay, I think.
My troops, my Marines, their safety, and concentrating on bringing artillery, aircraft, helicopters, gunships into the zone to annihilate the enemy. They always came first, still do. But I believe that's the way it should be, and I think my brothers gave me good advice about not asking your Marines to do anything you wouldn't do, and I ended up taking a couple of machine gun nests, and on top of saving several folks, that one of my platoons got pinned down very badly. But my troops were first in my life.
The way it should be. That's the way it should be.
Colonel Vargas, I wanted to know how the war changed you emotionally.
Where are you?
Oh, he's over here, sorry.
What was it? Oh, there you are. You know, Bruce always says he was 140-some pounds and tall, but I was about your size when I joined the Marine Corps. I'm teasing you, you know that. Emotionally, I think it was the strong belief in God that really gave me the foundation to be strong and to accept life as it came. And probably the good advice the brothers gave me. You know, they told me some ugly things before I went into combat, but into the Corps, I should say. But it doesn't matter what we saw in Vietnam. What amazes me is what the gentleman to our right down here, Lieutenant Walter Ehlers, when that generation, what they went through in World War II was just unbelievable. You can't describe it. Yes, we did see a lot. We did fight against some good warriors against us, but no, it didn't really bother me emotionally. There were times when I came home, I think this is true of all of us, it takes you time to kind of wind down. And today, a lot of our young troops are having difficulty with PTSD. because the numerous deployments that they're going on is just breathtaking to me. I know Pat and I have talked about this, but emotionally, no, I think it's because the other thing is that, like Bruce and I, we did okay in baseball. You know, he was an All-American, and I was a dinky little honorable mention All-American in our college days. But I think playing sports and physical activity and studying and accepting, you know, failure is something that's hard to accept. But that was one of the bullets I wanted to give you. There were times when I slipped, like all of us. We made mistakes, but emotionally, no, it didn't change my life. I wanted to get better, and that's how you should be. You should be one of the best citizens in this state of California. How's that?
We go over that side now.
Hello, my name is Megan Sauter, and my question for any of you gentlemen is, when you were saving men, did you think of them, or did you think of maybe their families, that when they would lose?
I think I've already said, I thought solely for my Marines. I went back, as an example, it was one of my Marines when I was carrying my battalion commander back, who his arm was just blown off, sitting by a tree, and the NVA were already counterattacking and fighting this hand-to-hand. But I promised him I would go back and get him. Now, how do I feel about that? I went back and found him.
What to ask questions.
And what really made me mad about Sammy is that when I had him on my shoulder and I was running back to give him to the corpsman, he yelled out, "Skipper, Skipper, I want my damn arm." So I had to go back and find his arm, and I did. And we put him on a chopper with that arm. That's how I feel.
You know, I never thought about it at the time, but when we saved a soldier's life, we were also saving a husband or a son, and also the grandchildren, great-grandchildren that would come from that one soldier's life that we saved. You don't think about that at the time. You're very, very busy. But that was something that I thought about later on, and it's like any kind of life-saving. It's just a wonderful thing to be able to do. But at the time that it's going on, you're so busy that the only emotion is really focus, concentration, and to try and get the guy out and get him to the hospital. But in later life, I have reflected on the number of grandchildren and children and marriages and stuff like that that were involved in the lives that we saved over there. So that's a gratifying thing for me.
You bet. And Pat did a lot. You know, thousands of missions that he flew in and picked up, not just one or two wounded warriors. He saved, I would say, 1,000.
One of the things that the Vietnam War produced was medical evacuation from all of our cities that are remote to hospitals and stuff. So that is one of the really positive things that came out of that war. We saved lots of lives in the civilian community afterward. When you're doing the job, you don't think about it. You never get to meet the people that you're carrying out, and they don't get to meet you. If I could find out all the guys I carried out, I'd charge them $5 a piece and retire again. But you treat the guys on the ground, they were my family. And you actually develop a sense of ownership with them. And you keep that for years afterward. We will get together in another month or so, the group that was in that battle. And it's great to do. We pat each other on the back, and then we make remarks about how old he looks. I don't look old. My eyesight's bad. Anyhow, we develop a relationship that's important on the battlefield, but it does come back to when you get back home and you get to meet their families of the ones that you've rescued, and realize that there's that many grandchildren running around. It's a great honor for that.
That's what I said earlier, is now's the time to start taking care of each other. It's not that hard. You know, I'm not saying you got to love everybody completely, but what I'm saying is that now's the time to establish that camaraderie that among yourselves and your classmates, and keep it forever. You'll never lose it.
You know, it's surprising, though, that sometimes you will meet in strange places people that you actually rescue.
Yeah.
In combat, we knew each other only by call signs. And my call sign was dust off 5-5 or double nickel. And so one day I'm doing a demonstration at this helicopter to show the community around Fort Benning how the helicopter ambulance worked in combat. And this beautiful young thing walked, thank God I shouldn't have said that, should I? Young lady walked up to me and she says, "Can I hug you?" And I said, "You can hug me all day." So she did, and shortly thereafter, her husband came behind her, and he was limping, and he had a big hunk taken out of his leg. Anyhow, to make a long story short, it turned out that I was the pilot because they recognized my call sign that had picked him up in Vietnam when he was wounded. And so that was another time I'm going in the handball courts, and the guy says, "Were you double nickel?" I says, "Yes." And he says, "Well, you did me a favor one time. What do you drink?" I said, "Scotch." Next day, he's got a half a gallon of Johnny Walker Black Scotch. So there are rewards, and you do occasionally meet people that you have rescued in combat, which is very, very rewarding.
Thank you for the question. It was good. Good question.
And I think, sorry, I just want to make a time point. So we're going to take one more live question. Then I also want to mention that we have an online audience who's watching us via webcast. So after this question, we're going to take a question from our online audience. But we'll go with this one.
Walter Ehlers, if you could go back to war, would you change anything?
What's he say?
If you could go back to the war, would you change anything?
If I went back to the war, I don't have anything to worry about. I haven't got much years left. But anyway, I would be sure that all those soldiers had as much training as they could possibly get before they were ever put into a war. And that's the most important thing. And I didn't get my Medal of Honor being a Rambo or anything like this. I was only doing my job. I had 2 years of training in combat before I ever went into war. Then I had 3 years in the war. But when I got my Medal of Honor, I was only doing my job. I went out and I rescued my man who had gotten wounded after we had let the rest of the squad return to cover and safely back behind the hedgerows there. And then it's something that you do naturally. You don't think about it, and I didn't know anything about getting a Medal of Honor until in December of 1944. I got it for the 9th and 10th of June as a staff sergeant, and everybody says, "Well, what were you doing?" And then somebody said, "Well, why did you go back for the BAR?" I said, and they say, "What were you thinking?" I said, "I wasn't thinking. I was just doing my job." And I said, if I'd have been thinking, I probably wouldn't have went back for it. So it's things like that that happens. And I have to tell you that I'm not, telling you to be a Christian or anything like this, but I'm telling you what it does for you, though. For instance, I had a man, and when I was in the States, I asked him to go to church with me one morning. He says, "Well, I'm an atheist." I said, "Well, you be anything you want to be." And so he did. He went into church. When he came out, he says, "I'm an atheist." I said, well, again, I told him, you can be anything you want to be. And so we were out, the first battle we got into in Africa, where the tanks were coming down this valley, and they were shelling us, and they told us to dig in on the hill up there. And so Pete, he's out there digging in on the hill, and he says, oh, God help me, oh, God help me. And I thought, wow, what happened? And so after it was all over, I said to Pete, I said, how come you were, I said, are you still an atheist? He said, yeah. I said, well, how come you were asking God to help you out there? And he said, there wasn't anybody else to ask to help me. So that's, you know, you hear these things, and I actually see them happen there in combat. You know, people really talking to their faith in God automatically because they thought they'd given it up. But it's a hard thing to give up. And actually, what are we fighting for? We're fighting for our freedom. And freedom is your religion, anybody's religion. If they want to be free, but they better believe. That's the thing about it.
I'd like to make one comment to him. Never make decisions that you think you can change tomorrow.
Yeah.
Once you make one, realize that's for life, and go on from that. But you can't change your decisions next week or the week after.
You know, I would just add a little vignette to, since what Walter's talking about, would you do it over again? And there was another Medal of Honor recipient. His name was Webster Anderson, great black, powerful soldier. And he was on a hilltop in Vietnam one night, and they were overrun by the communists. The first wave pretty much took off both of his legs, and then he still fought on. And the next attack, they threw a hand grenade into his position. Webster caught the hand grenade, and when he was throwing it away, it kind of took off his arm. And there was in the middle of a tropical storm, and I managed to get in and get Webster and his wounded guys and get him to the hospital, where they saved his life. But he lost both legs and he lost an arm. And so Webster and I became very close. He thought that I'd saved his life. And we would go talk to students like this around the country. And he wouldn't sit. We had to prop him up. He had two fake legs and a fake arm that he had a cane on. And so we'd prop him up there, and kids would ask questions. One kid said the same thing that we just heard. They called him Mr. Sergeant Webster Anderson. If you had it to do over again, knowing what you know now, 2 legs, 1 arm, would you do it again? And Webster looked at him, he says, kid, I only got 1 arm left, but my country can have it any time they want. So to me, that was the definition of a true patriot. Webster Anderson, great black soldier.
I'll follow that. One of our recipients on the War on Terror is Leroy Petrie, and Leroy's at Fort Lewis, Washington right now, still in. And I asked him that question. He says, yes, I'd throw it left-handed next time. So, good attitude.
Okay, do we have our online question? Are we able to bring that up on the screens? Okay, so the question that comes from online, and students have been submitting these over the last couple of weeks. This one, so what helped you to be strong, think clearly, and not to give up? So in the situations you were in battle, is there anything from your past or your training? What was it that really helped you to, in that moment of intensity and danger, that really helped you to rise to the occasion?
Faith, training.
Did you hear the question?
I think it was training, and in my case, I could never go home and embarrass my brothers. You know, that was the big thing. They had already proven themselves, and so but I want to go back to the love of troops. You know, I really do. And when you lead them into combat, and Pat covered this, you better know what the hell you're doing, and you better be caring, and you better be smart, and you the art of anticipation is a lost art among America's society today. So to you, learn how to anticipate. And that was another key my brother gave.
Actually, what inspired me to do what I did is that I had a lot of training in the military service, and I was a leader of a squad that hadn't had any combat training before we went into Normandy. And when we got into this situation in the hedgerows, we'd knocked out 3 machine gun nests, and then we knocked out a mortar position, and then the next day I was inspired to do it because I was the leader of my squad. And I knew, number one thing is I could smell the Germans, and so I led my squad. I had a company commander, not a company commander, but a platoon leader had just came over from Benning, Georgia. He had 39, I think they called him a 90-day wonder, and he was a lieutenant. And he told me to go out. The company commander wanted us to send out a squad and go into this town. And so my platoon leader told me to take the squad out, and I started to lead the squad. And he says, "Sergeant, we don't do it that way." I said, "Oh." And he says, "You send out 2 of your scouts," and he says, "and I'm going to follow them, and then you bring up the squad behind them." I said, "Well, that's not the right way to do it," because, my squad wasn't that well trained. And I said, "Well, that's the way I do it." And he said, "Well, this is a direct order." So he said, "You bring up the squad after we go out." So they got out, and this is in Germany. And they got into a shell hole in the Siegfried line there. They had a lot of bomb holes in that particular area. And they got pinned down in there by a tank sitting in the little old town out there. And it was across an alley, and they saw these guys coming across the field. So they started firing on them. They got shelled. They got into a hole, and they couldn't get out. So I brought my squad around, and I got a bazooka, and we got it aimed at the tank, and hit the tank in some soft spot. We didn't know, but I knew where to shoot at, and that's where I had him to shoot. He had never shot the bazooka before, and so that was his first shot, and it hit that soft spot. And these Germans came out of that tank like flies, and pretty soon we went over and we captured the tank. We went out there, and we captured the tank, and then I came back, and I said, "Lieutenant," I said, "it's okay to come out now." and he did, and then he apologized to me. He said, "I'll never tell you how to run your squad again." So that was, I felt proud of my moment at that time.
I would, the one thing that you learn, that I learned in the military, and you learn this in life too, that we're not all born equal. Just not. You look around you and you see people bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, God forbid, have better hair than you have. And so we are not, in terms of ability, in terms of opportunity, we're simply not all born equal. But there is one way, and only one way, and I think this is the key to success in life, and this is what we try to teach in our program, that we are all born equal, and that is in terms of courage. Each of us can have all the courage we want. You can't use it up. And it's the secret to success in life. It produces great people from those among us who were not given great ability and who did not have great opportunities in their life. So courage to me was a very important thing, but where does it come from? It's the key to success in life, but where does it come from, and what allows you to use courage on the battlefield or anywhere else? And the answer is simply faith. I've never found anything else to explain some of the things that I've seen people do in combat or in the classroom or anywhere else. Faith. I believe that there's something worth dying for, that there's someone or something above and beyond the person that you are that's more important than that particular moment. So, you know, I can explain my faith. I wouldn't do it for anybody else. But for me, faith is the foundation of courage. Courage is the key to success in life. And I've said this before, and people think, you know, I've been almost dead a bunch of times, but I was never afraid. Faith for me was a substitute for fear. It was for me a source of confidence, calm. It gave me a confidence and I think a capacity to do things that for me would have otherwise been impossible. So faith to me was the source of everything and anything that I ever did in combat.
You know, Pat is right. As I said earlier, you know, believe in your God or your supreme being, whoever you believe in, the Great Spirit, whatever it is. But he's right. I don't think a day goes by without I'm communicating with the big guy to kind of watch over me. I even asked him to help me on a golf course, but he's been letting me down here lately.
No strokes for you. Well, Jay actually had his family he was afraid of. So the Marines and his family brought that courage to him. One of the things that I got asked the most when I came home was, didn't you have fear? And I did have fear, but it was fear of making a bad decision that caused some of my men to die or caused some of the men I was supporting to die. So fear fear for your own life was not in my category. I was more afraid of making a bad decision. And that's more important when you're doing those things in my judgment. The lack of, you should have fear that you're going to cause a problem for your troops, but not fear for your own self.
That is well put. I have two bullets that I failed to pass on to you. Don't ever, if you fall or you fail, it's not the end of the world. I was just over in New Mexico talking to some of the students, and some of them had blown an algebra class. There was just no way that he could get through it, two of them, and they were ready to quit school. Don't ever quit. You know, get into some other general math or something. If you know, we're not all scientists, and I wasn't worth a darn in math. You know, yeah, I took algebra, but when I started taking calculus and geometry, I said, that's it. You know, I got to go into another field that general math that taught me the problem solving. But don't ever be afraid to if you fall down and fail, that you get back up, and don't be afraid to, as Pat put it very well, you know, lean on your faith. Get back on your feet and keep going forward. And the other thing that Bruce hit upon in a way was that if you make a mistake, admit it. If you truly know that you made a mistake, don't ever hesitate to say, I made a mistake. Because a lie just gets you deeper into, you know, your inner soul. So.
All right. Excellent. Now, it pains me to do this because I think that if given the opportunity, we could sit here for hours upon hours, given all I see just the sea of questions and all the students who have lined up. But we are out of time. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask for one thing. So one, I know that part of the program, the Medal of Honor, and the learning program is bringing Medal of Honor recipients into classrooms via Skype, you know, maybe asking questions. So for those of you who still have questions, I know that you want to get them asked. Have your teachers get in contact with me. We'll put them in touch, and we will get those questions answered, because I don't want you to leave here feeling that you have a question that's been unanswered. We'll work our best to do that. And I apologize tremendously. I would also like to ask, at the beginning of the talk today, Colonel Vargas mentioned keys that he was given. And so as kind of a closing, I would love it if each of our panelists could maybe give us one key. I know a lot of the questions that students have been asking are about advice, and given your experience, your heroism, your courage, if you had just one nugget or one key that you could pass on to our audience here today as kind of a final word, what would that be? And we'll close with that. So,
I'll take
I
it
know
from
the same,
here.
yeah.
You heard me say earlier, believe in yourself and be yourself. It's very important to be yourself. You know, I see too many great students trying to dress like, you know, those guys that pants are damn near falling off. So I say be yourself and believe in yourself. Always believe in yourself. That's my advice.
One thing, if I didn't have faith, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did, and because I left it in God's hand. And I figured that I had to do this because it had to be done. And it wasn't, I had no control over when I was going to die or anything like that. I was fighting to live. And so I never worried about dying, but I was really scared all the time. And I was fighting to live. I wasn't fighting to die. And so, and I put my faith in God, and somehow it worked. And I'm still here today, and I still have my faith in God and in my children and in my grandchildren. I instill faith in them too, because I think they should know it, that it's the best thing that you can do in your lifetime is to have faith and not to be a hero. I didn't go out to be a hero or anything. I had no idea I was ever going to get a Medal of Honor. And I read about it in the Stars and Stripes. That's how I found out I was getting the Medal of Honor. And when I got back to my outfit, a colonel called me by my last name. He said, "Sergeant Ehlers, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, sir, I'm reporting back to duty." He says, "We're supposed to be back in the States getting the Medal of Honor from the President." I said, "Yes, sir, I read about it in the Stars and Stripes." That's how I found out about it. So I finally got it from John C.H. Lee in Paris, France. And
You want to go?
it's a great thing to have faith.
Yeah, well, my friend here, it takes him a while to get his thoughts together, so I'll go for him. The thing that I would leave with all of you, and you know, we in our program, I want you to go into the program. We teach you there the keys to success, courage. Source of courage is faith, sacrifice, love, and action. The key to happiness in life, and a hero. Can't separate goodness from a hero. Celebrities are not heroes. So you go through the program and learn those things. But the one thing I would leave you with is to look around you and realize how blessed you are to be an American. How extraordinary it is. And the other thing I would ask you to do, and we're all part of this, is that, you know, America has no kings, no queens, no dukes, no duchesses, and all that stuff. But we do have a nobility in America. And America's nobility is called veterans. And so that's what those of us who are part of America's nobility do, is try to pass on to the younger people in terms of being a bad example, as I said, a way around the obstacles that we met in life. You know, I was on the golf course with my friend the other day, and he laid out the tape measure that measures how close you are to the pin. And he says, "Here's your lifespan, Brady, and there's where you are. And so here's your lifespan, and you guys are right here. And so you might as well be further ahead when you get to where I am than you are today. Every day as it begins, that's it. Be further ahead when you get here than you were when you were right here." And that's the thing we try to do through this program that we have. And we're living our lives over again through you and trying to keep you from making the same stupid mistakes that we made as we struggled through our lives. So you are so blessed to be an American, and that's very important.
Yeah, I got the mic last after Pat. He referred to me as his son. Usually he says illegitimate son. So the one thing I would tell each of you, and if I was to only give you one thing, is have self-respect. Respect yourself, and you will respect others. When you look in the mirror in the morning, be happy with what you see. You can't change it much. But if in our country we've lost a lot of civility, and I would like to see that come back. And if self-respect is the key to that, I think. And those of you that are in school now, I would encourage all of you to go on and get your education. No matter how long it takes, keep going to school, keep learning.
All right. I have one last thing to say to you, that you all live in the greatest country ever. This country has freed more people since the World War II than all the other nations combined have freed. This is an actual fact. I mean, you can look it up in the history books, and you can find out that countries that we fought against were liberated and became democracies. Germany's a democracy. France was a democracy. We were freedom from the Nazis. Italy's a democracy. Freedom from fascism. Japan's a democracy. We freedom from imperialism. All these countries are the biggest responsibility for their freedoms have been the United States of America. And you can be so proud of your country. And we hope that you'll continue to be proud of it, because you'll do the same things that we did, and you will do greater things that we did. We hope that you do.
So, to our students, though most of us in the audience will never be in the exact same circumstances that our panelists here were today, there will be moments in your life, challenging moments, uneasy moments, maybe even terrifying moments, when things like your courage and your integrity and your commitment to your community are going to be tested. And I just want to say thank you to our panelists today for giving us a great example of how we should respond in these situations. Then I'm going to ask that our students please remain seated. Elisa Whiteley, who's the manager of our Discovery Center, the very lovely, will come up and dismiss everyone. And please, our guests are going to depart. They're going upstairs to sign some books.
Going off now?
And yeah, so thank you very much, and have a great day.
Okay. Thank you again.